Alright, welcome to the third video in the series in which we'll take a look how you can actually deploy a .NET application onto a Linux server from your Visual Studio or whatever you're working with. And I did forget one thing in the last video. I did create the My App user, but I didn't set his password. Now I have, and now we can connect to that user via FTP. So FTP is working correctly, which is great. So basically you open up Visual Studio and there's this amazing idea you have, the best website in the world, and we're gonna start the new project, ASP.NET Core Web Application. My app, let's call it the same way the account is made. It doesn't have to be, doesn't matter. Web application. For this I'm not going to configure it for HTTPS because I don't have a certificate for this domain. Doesn't really matter. No authentication, it's just gonna be a blank site. Let's see once the project is created. Alright, we basically have set up the project, and on one way this is basically it, and there are two ways you can move the files over. Okay, now I'm in the project folder for this application, and one way to do this would be simply to drag and drop everything from here. A typical FTP transfer. I will explain why this is possible, and that's because the .NET SDK we have installed on the server allows for creation and building of applications for .NET. So if I were to say .NET run from here, the server would actually start because it recognized the CS project file, and it's currently building the application in the background. And there we go. The system started on localhost 5000. If we were to go here and press F5, we can see the application here. Everything seems to be working just fine, and of course in all redirections you can see the log here. Now I'll show you the other way of how you can set this up through Visual Studio, so you don't have to FTP on your own. Let's cancel this out. Okay, so I've removed all the files from the first project. If we were to refresh the site now, it would turn to bad gateway again because the server is not running. So the other version of how you can set this up is by right pressing your project file and going to publish. We can press the start button here. We'll pick the IIS FTP, etc. We have to create the profile. FTP. Now for the server we will just use the server's IP. Site path, we leave this to default. We don't have to move anything about here. My app and the password for the account. The destination URL, we can leave this blank. Validate connection, it connected successfully. Target framework is correct. We will deploy the release build to this site. We can press next, save, and press the publish button. Now the core difference between doing this the first way and this way is that if you deploy the application through Visual Studio, the server will not contain the website code. It will be compiled, and we'll see that in a second once this is finished loading. Alright, the web app was successfully published. We have one successful build, one successful publish, and if I were to go to the server, this is the folder where the server is. Okay, and we have our project here. It was successfully deployed as the Visual Studio said. There are some files here, and you will notice the DLL file, which is basically the compiled runtime for For the application, basically when you use Visual Studio to deploy your application, the application will be compiled, which is good or bad depending on how you look at it. To run this, we just have to type .NET without run this time, myapp.dll. If I press enter here, there will be the .NET now listening on port 5000, now listening on port 5001. Nginx is already configured and running. If I refresh this, I will see the same project here running from a compiled code on a Linux server. You can pretty much do everything here in Visual Studio as you normally would. Basically, this is pretty much it. Feel free to ask anything you want in the comments. If you need help with anything, I'll be here. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something new and that I'll be able to see a lot more .NET applications on the web.